Hi guys, it's Mrs. Trosvik down in House 6B. Today we are on Unit 8, Lesson 4. We are going to do a quick little refresher of our quadrilateral shapes because we're going to use them to solve for area over the next few lessons. All right, so today a quadrilateral is just a polygon, which means a closed shape using straight edges or straight sides with 4 sides. So anytime you see quad, that means 4. Type of quadrilaterals we've talked about in the past are parallelograms. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral in which both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. Remember, parallel lines will never cross. So parallel lines, if I were to extend laser beams from my hands straight out, they would never ever cross each other. If they weren't parallel, they would eventually cross each other if I were to extend my laser beams out. So parallel lines will never, ever, ever, ever cross each other. So if we look over to the right-hand side, we have quite a few parallelograms. These have 2 sets of parallel lines. So a square is a parallelogram. This has 2 sets of parallel lines. So this is a parallelogram. This has 2 sets of parallel lines. So this is a parallelogram. And this has 2 sets of parallel lines, so this is a parallelogram. The only shape on this example piece is not a parallelogram, is our trapezoid. Because if I were to continue my dots, my laser beams out from these sides, eventually they would cross each other. So a trapezoid cannot be a parallelogram. Our second one is a rhombus. A rhombus is a parallelogram with specifically 4 congruent sides. Congruent means that they are exactly the same lengths. They do not have to technically have 90-degree angles, but they could. So a square can be a rhombus because it has 4 sides with the same length, and they are parallel. So a square is a rhombus. But we also have other shapes that don't have 90-degree angles that are rhombuses, like this parallelogram that is a rhombus, and they don't have the same exact angles. They have the opposite angles as the same, but they have 2 sets of parallel sides. So we would consider this guy a rhombus, but not a square. Our square can be a square and a rhombus. Okay. Let's jump to square. Obviously, a square is a rhombus with 4 right angles. So our square is a rhombus, but it has to have 4 right angles inside. A trapezoid is a quadrilateral with only 1 pair of parallel sides. This is the only shape we have over here with only 1 set of parallel sides, and that's the top and the bottom. These 2 sides are not parallel because one angles one direction and one angles the other direction. So this is our only trapezoid. Now, out of these 2, they are both parallelograms. So yes, we can define them as parallelograms, but this one is a certain type of parallelogram that wasn't listed, and I bet most of you know this from elementary school. This is a parallelogram, but specifically, it is a rectangle. And this one is a parallelogram, but it cannot be a square because it doesn't have all sides the same. It can't be a rectangle because it doesn't have 90-degree angles. And it can't really be a rhombus because it doesn't have all sides the same length. So this shape right here can only be described as a parallelogram. All right, next, we're going to jump to area. So let's jump down. Area is always expressed in square units, such as inches squared, meters squared, and feet squared. The area of squares and rectangles equals length, L, times the width, W. Instead of length times width, this is the elementary version of what you learned. We are going to turn it up to our middle school version, and we are going to define it as the base times the height. So B equals base and H equals height. Now, once we know the base or the length and the height or the width, we can simply use the same exact formula of just multiplying our length and width or our base times our height, and we will solve for the area. So let's practice that. Down below, we have a length or a base of 4 centimeters. We have a height of 4 centimeters. So simply, if we put it in for base times height, we would just take 4 times 4, and the area of this shape would be 16 centimeters squared. Now remember, you need to define area with a 2. A good way of memorizing this is just a drawing on a piece of paper. This is 2-dimensional. This is not something you can take off the paper and lift up. So a good way of remembering, anytime we find the area of a 2-dimensional shape, we have to have an exponent of 2. So centimeters squared. Another way of remembering this is we have squares that make up our area. And if we say centimeters squared, we are usually measuring in squares. Okay, next shape. This time they gave us our area, but they only gave us our height. So let's go back to the formula. Base times height equals the area of our shape. We're going to use a little bit of algebra. I know you guys love algebra. So we're going to put 21 in for the area because they gave us the area. We're going to put 3 centimeters in for the height because they gave us the height. And we're going to use b for base, a variable, to solve for our missing piece because we're missing the base or the top of our shape. The bottom and the top are exactly the same on a rectangle. All right, so we're going to use a little bit of algebra. If we are multiplying, we have to do the opposite of multiply, and we need to divide 3 from both sides. 3 divided by 3 gives me 1 times b, which really just equals b. And then it gives me 21 divided by 3, which really equals 7. So b has to equal 7. Now, because my area was centimeters squared, and because my base and my height have to be just measurements of length, our label is not centimeters squared, it's just 7 centimeters because we are measuring from this point to this point, or this point to this point. The length of the base is 7 centimeters. You're just going to use what you know from algebra to find that missing piece by just plugging it back in the formula. All right, you guys, go to the student page. I want you to use the workspace. If you need more scratch paper, you're more than welcome to use the scratch paper. Remember, to find the area, you take the base times the height. If you already know the area, like in this shape, you are actually solving for the base and the height. Some of them you are solving for the height, some of them you are solving for the base, and some of them you are just solving for the area. So make sure you keep track of what is missing and what are you solving for. All right, good luck, guys. When you are done, make sure that you pick out the clues. You do not have to do number 11. This one is just your challenge. So if you want to give your brain a little bit of a challenge, try out number 11. I do recommend you draw a picture for number 9 and 10 to help you solve. It's the easiest way to see the geometry. All right, guys, good luck. Listen to your teachers. Have a good day. If you need help, don't forget to ask. All right, bye, guys.